Hello, everyone. It's Dom here from Esports News UK. I've got a very special guest today. It's an honour to interview a real legend of the game, a veteran player. It's jungler Diamondprox, who's just joined Bifrost in the NLC. So, welcome to UK and Northern Europe League of Legends, Diamondprox. How's it going?
Glad to be here, thank you. It's going pretty well. I'm enjoying the team atmosphere for now. We didn't play too much. We played only a couple of weeks together, but already it's going quite fine.
Great stuff. And to people joining, feel free to ask your questions in the chat. I have a long list of questions, of course, but feel free to put your questions in the chat, and I'll put the best ones to Daniil. And yeah, I guess now obviously you have a storied history in the game, Daniil. You've played for more than 10 years. Teams like Moscow Five, Gambit, most recently Team Spirit, and now you're with Bifrost in the NLC. You've seen a lot in the game, and I find it interesting that we're now getting these higher tier players and veteran players coming into the European regional leagues. We've seen players like Reckless in France and so on with Carmine Corp. Why did you decide to join Bifrost in particular, in and this region in particular?
Overall, I like playing in Europe. I liked it all the time. Whenever I had a chance to play with English-speaking teams, I really enjoyed it. I never had a bad experience ever, only with some rules being applied that forced me to not play in Europe, basically. And overall, I think NLC is one of the bigger ERL leagues, so that's a good place to be. And Bifrost, they really caught my eye with the roster. I already knew the coaching staff. We were actually considering bringing them to the team spirit because they're both Russian speaking, and we asked them before the season, but they decided to go with NLC. I respect their decision, and we had to do without them. But now I have a chance to work with them. It's like the world is kind of close. And I enjoyed the roster, and that's why I joined. That's the biggest reason, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of which, the roster, we were talking a little bit before we went live. I asked how scrims are going, and you were saying you feel like a good unit.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I feel like this roster, everyone kind of wanna win. They don't want to pull the like pull the resources onto themselves so they look better or whatever. It feels like everyone is willing to sacrifice if it's needed in order for the team success, and also everyone is willing to learn and admit mistakes instead of trying to defend like the useless points, which sometimes happen in some rosters. And when everyone is motivated to work together, it feels like you're actually improving, and that's what the most interesting part in League of Legends for me is in competitive League of Legends is working together as a team, as an individual, like as the whole organism together, improving, sharing knowledge, helping each other out, and stuff like that. This is what really it all about for me in League of Legends, and it's glad to have this situation again around myself.
And as someone who's been in League of Legends for quite some time now, do you feel like that's changed? In the early days of League of Legends, do you feel like it was more five individual players, or do you feel like it's always been about that cohesive team unit? Because we still see, in the LEC, this team vitality super team for me, for the first part of the season at least, were looking like they were playing five solo queue players as opposed to an actual whole team. Do you feel like that's changed over the years and it's become more of a team focused thing at the esports level?
I think partially, I think overall it became, yeah, more team oriented. But back then, only the teams that could have the players that were willing to sacrifice in order for the team to win, those teams succeeded. And us as a team in Moscow Five, I think most like I mean, I didn't sacrifice as much as maybe Edward. Edward was willing to sacrifice everything for the team, and Darian was kind of playing his own unique style where he doesn't require anything. He provides pressure, but also feeds a lot because of it, and it kind of worked, but it wasn't intentional, as to say. Right now, I think most of the teams realize that you need to actually help each other. It's being taught by the coaching staff to the players, and now everyone understands it much better. Still, some players really like to focus the attention on their lanes more than others,
Mm.
and it's actually not the bad thing overall. It's only becomes a bad thing when uh, they come to a certain point where the attention they require is too much, and it becomes a problem for the team that they are too focused on top lane, mid lane, or maybe junglers. Some junglers, I think, tend to play too hyper carry oriented, where the meta suits this playstyle very rarely, just because of the riot balancing.
Yeah, do you know, speaking of which, I had this question for later on, but what are your thoughts on the new changes, right, have implemented with the damage reduction? What are your thoughts on that as a jungler?
I think those changes are actually very, very good for the game. The overall prolonging the fights, making everyone more tankier, not dying from the single, like when you get a single CC. Like before that, there's a tenacity stat in the game, and basically it reduces the CC, and some CC is like 1.5 second, or usually it's like 1.2 or 1 second. And whenever before you got hit by any CC at all, you die before the tenacity even helps you survive. Basically, you get bursted down so quick you don't even realize. Now you can
Mm.
actually get use of this tenacity, and maybe get away after being hit by one initial CC if it's not being tunneled correctly by uh, other champions in enemy team. And it's actually the best time I had in League of Legends was when team fights were actually like they felt longer. Everyone had their impact,
Yeah.
but no one was like there's there used to be a problem after like I had a good experience in season three when the team fights were kind of long, but you also provided as a jungler because you're usually lower levels than other, but you're still playing a fighter champions. You still could provide something for the team fights and be useful as a CC machine, or you could also deal damage. But then after in season four and season five, Riot made like very bad decisions to make the junglers playing champions without CC, basically power farmers, and also reduce their perhaps damage, but the damage of the mid laners was so high that you basically became a very useless champion after like I don't
Mm.
know 20 minutes into the game. And now most of the junglers provide CC and they can actually sustain in fights quite well, so they don't feel as useless. The only thing that I'm a bit concerned about with these changes is that every champion received around 80 85 HP, I think, at level 3, and that's where the early game starts for the junglers. Every jungler wants to try to gank like from level 3 to level 6 at least a couple of times and provide pressure for their laners. And in some situations, it used to be close. Like when you gank someone, you really rely on your damage to execute them. How to say? You didn't tend to overkill people before level 6,
Right.
and right now we come to the point where there could be actually not after all the nerfs to all the junglers like Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Viego, those aggressive early game junglers. Now we come to the point where on those early game ganks, even if you play correctly as a jungler and synergize well with the laner, you can still not get a kill just because of those HP buffs. And I think Riot needs to do something about this level 3 till level 6 window where they need to buff the jungler's damage perhaps, so jungler pressure keeps the same as it used to be before. But after level 6, I really enjoy the HP buff and resistance buff as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And listen, I'm a lower reload player, but you talking about season three, season four, that's when I first started playing the game. So I remember the old jungle items and all of that stuff. And I have seen a few coaches and things out there saying at the moment they expect champions like Shyvana. to do quite well in possibly. I mean, maybe not at the esports level, but because she has those inbuilt resistances, mRNA armor, that's going to work quite well with these, increased health and things like that. Do you think we're going to see a shift in meta to champions like that?
I think we definitely are going to see a shift of the meta, but I wouldn't say Shyvana gets anything from these buffs. If maybe the AD Shyvana version of the champion, but
Mm,
the AP one, which I find the more useful one, actually I think is a little bit worse because you don't like you used to burst people down and do so much like bursty damage that they are afraid of you, but now it will be just lower damage. And also I think the buff to the MR, especially on all the champions, reduces the power of the bursty AP champs.
mm,
Mm, so Shyvana struggles a lot from it, and as the just a bruiser, she provides 0 CC, so I think she's not that good. But overall, I think the perhaps the meta will shift a lot because of the matchups on the lanes, and junglers will just have to adapt to those matchups. It's usually how the game goes. It's not the other way around where you like some junglers become better and all the laners are playing around them. That's not like the game works in the past years. Usually, for example, Victor now might survive the laning phase better because before it was really easy to gank him anytime, and now with the resistances buff and like much harder to kill him from level 3 to level 6, he
mm.
can actually survive the laning phase much more consistent, and those champs like Victor really tend to scale a lot, and because of them the jungle pool can change as well. We will just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, it's great stuff. We've got someone in the chat here who's from one of your rival teams in the NLC. It's Hi Rav. Hi Rav. Thanks for tuning in. That's the founder of X7, who won the split last year. Now, Bifrost, you guys before you joined finished top of the season, top of the table, but then X7 won in the playoffs. So Hi Rav has asked, are there any players in the NLC that Daniil is particularly looking forward to playing versus? And I guess that ties in with one of my questions. Are you very familiar with other players or teams in the NLC?
I'm not very familiar with the teams. I'm familiar with some players, but I don't necessarily know all the roster changes that happened to the teams. So I cannot comment on that too much. I would I would maybe like to beat Kasink if he's still there. I think he's quite a good player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he is still there. As I understand it, not all of the teams have announced the completed rosters yet. I think there's a couple left to go. But from what I understand, Kasing is still there, and he's someone that's been in the, you know, like you, he's been in League of Legends for a long time now, and he's been in the UK scene. He's played with Excel. He's been in Spain, and he's played at Worlds and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And speaking of UK players, you have a UK teammate in Shikari in the top lane, another sort of veteran player in the UK. What's it been like playing with him? Has he given you any insights into what the UK scene is like?
We didn't talk about much about the scenes or UK scene, especially. Um, Shikari is a player I really enjoy playing with him because he always is he's active. He wants to help the team a lot, and he communicates how he could do better, his ideas and stuff like that. It really shows that he's very interesting in improving, and I appreciate the players like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hirav says he was hoping you'd say Kasing. Haha, two players who've been in the scene for 10ish years. What a clash that will be. And Hirav, that's a clip for you there, right? The Kasing versus Diamondprox. That's going to be great. It'd be good to see what Kasing thinks as well. Now, just a quick bit before we went live, I was talking about where you're based. You're still based in Russia, in St. Petersburg,
Yep.
right? And you said, but you don't really have ping issues there, but and you're not sure if there's a boot camp happening. But I guess it's been work as usual for you, right? It's been easy to slot in where you're based at the moment.
Uh, Actually, for me, I for 10 years now, I think I haven't worked a single split from home apart from the like half a split where I helped Gambit qualify to LCL. Apart from
Yeah.
that, I always played from the bootcamp. So the only time I played without a bootcamp was in the end of 2011. I think it's like 11 years ago or something. After that, it's all like bootcamps, and it will be actually nice to. Uh, I basically have nothing to compare bootcamps to, so I know bootcamps are quite efficient if everyone is interested and no one is suffering from being around teammates all the time.
Yeah.
But I've never in this time had a situation where everyone was playing from home, so it will be a new experience, and I'm actually looking forward to it as a good thing. And I will also see a summer, to see a summer in my city for once in this 12 years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a bonus as well. Absolutely. I'd love to ask you what your aims are for the summer season and beyond as well, Diamondprox. I'm guessing Bifrost want to win. That's their aims. They did pretty well in the EU Masters. What are your sort of goals?
Uh, my goal is to basically improve as much as I can as an individual and help the team as well with the experience I have and maybe with the ideas that will arise in the future, because the game is going to be so much different. Like, I think the game was kind of stale in the last year
Mm,
after the last summer changes. There's nothing new was emerging. Really, everything was kind of the same, and right now the game is going to be completely different. And now maybe my experience will help to understand something faster than others.
mm.
Maybe not. We will see. And overall, I'm just looking forward to work with it as a team and to improve as much as we can and go as far as we can as possible.
I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on. And what are your thoughts on the European regional leagues as well? Because you're experienced in the LCL. Obviously, the European regional leagues are slightly different, where we have these multiple different leagues, and in particular, France and Spain are pretty popular. But the NLC, we've had some good players and good teams in there over the years as well, and we've reached latter stages of the EU Masters. Last year we got to the finals twice, lost to Carmine Cook both times, unfortunately. But I know there are a few teams in the NLC that want to get there, and want to knock Carmine Cook off their perch. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on those ERLs and the fact that other big name players have moved to ERLs, like I say, Reckless, Forbidden, Haru and Tempt, and now you.
I think ERL leagues have improved insanely much by the last like I think 5 years or so. It's all the all the work Riot have put into this league really pays off, and we see by the amount of attention the Spanish league, the French league, and other leagues are getting, and it's only growing, and it's actually quite interesting to see right now, because I remember, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 6, maybe something like that, but uh, quite long time ago, like European second division leagues, they were not so good. I remember, like, I only cared about LCS back then. Like right now,
Mm.
it's LEC. I only cared about those games between the first maybe 6 or 4 teams playing between each other and nothing else. Right now, actually, there are much more teams that you can learn something from. I think in France, there's at least 2 or maybe 3 good teams that you can learn from. In other ERL leagues, there are actually teams that are capable of producing something very good as well. Also, I think that the top U Masters team could compete against LEC. At least they could. I think they would beat the bottom 4 teams and maybe compete with the middle pack. It's not
Mm.
quite on the level of the highest LEC teams ever, but maybe if the players are not going to be how to say brought from the ERL to the LEC directly right after they show some good results, maybe then ERL teams could show up the better results compared to the LEC. But I think it's really good infrastructure in growing the new players, making them learn a lot, and just because every team has a coaching staff, has the good players that can teach each other. I think League of Legends knowledge in our region grows a lot because of it. And also, already I can say that I enjoy playing in ERL team just because we get kind of better scrims than we did in Russia. I don't know
Really?
why. Yeah, much better opponents.
Okay, well that's interesting to hear. And yeah, I have to ask about solo queue as well, because again we were mentioning off camera, you get people saying to you over the years, I played against you in solo queue years ago. I was talking to someone last night at this Excel launch party that they played against you in solo queue. You must have seen the game change a lot. What's that been like, having knowing that new players are coming in who maybe aren't aware of you or as aware as people were, you know, back 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see how the game grows. And some people that recognize you in solo queue, they say that they're watching you from season 2, and then they tell that they're like 16 years old, and then you wonder, oh my god, how young have you been when you watched me in season 2, man? And now you're playing in Challenger in the same games that I do, and maybe you show even better results in the leagues. It's actually really really good to see the young generation improving so much in the game that you love and you're passionate about, and maybe they're the future of this game. uh,
That must be nice to know you're an inspiration as well to some of these younger players that have come up. I'm guessing you've had players say to you, hey, I looked up to you, I watched you, and you encouraged me to be a player.
yeah, I've had many interactions like that. I don't know how to respond to them, to be honest. I'm a little bit shy in this regard.
But I mean, that's a good thing, to be honest. I think a bit of modesty in this industry, because we do have a lot of egos in esports, and you know, you seem to come across as someone who's quite grounded, which I think lends itself well to being part of a team as well. So yeah, moving on. We've spoken about the NLC. Were there? Did you have? Can I ask? Did you have any other offers that sort of tempted you? Were you close to maybe playing in a different region?
I've had a couple of other offers that tempted me, maybe monetarily, and some of them from the other regions, some of them from the different parts of the world. Even I don't,
Mm.
I don't mind too much traveling around the world. I love the stuff. I really enjoyed the time being in Brazil in the last year. Uh, I really love to see the new cultures that I haven't experienced before, the new people. Even though it drains my energy to be around the people all the time, but I really enjoy it from time to time. uh, but I think it wasn't a close call for me this year, just because the roster different. Even though they're like monetarily some other teams were better, I think the roster that we have right now, just it was the most important thing for me to be in the roster that could succeed, and that everyone is actually willing to try hard. So it wasn't a close call now.
Absolutely. I mean, let's talk a bit about the roster. We've spoke about Shikari. You've got Fury, Odie, and Highway. Um, and yeah, like you say, you've kind of got good synergy there. Is there anything else you want to mention about being part of that roster? I mean, it's a first for you coming into the NLC. I don't think we've had many Russian players in the NLC. I'll have to do my research. I should have done my research. It could be that you're one of the first Russian players to play in the NLC.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll look into that. I'll do my research. Um,
And regarding other players from the team, uh, I wouldn't like to hype the players too much, because but I think some of them I really are really good. But I won't say the names. But I think I will. I don't know. After the split, I will talk all the good things about them. And for now, I hope they stay humble and try hard.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Now we have a tournament in the UK. It's a British thing. It's called Insomnia Gaming Festival. Have you heard of it before?
Uh, Only a couple of words, but I don't really know what it is.
Okay, or iSeries. So it's basically where people bring their own computers in a big LAN hall, and they
Oh,
take part in an open tournament. I mean, it doesn't have a very big prize pool. and you tend to get not many organisations taking part. But I have to ask you the question now that you're in the UK Nordics League scene, would you attend a LAN like that in the future if Bifrost flew you over?
Uh, Perhaps because one of the most memorable experience from my past was when I we played DreamHack in Sweden a couple of
Yeah.
times, and they tend to hold this exhibition when everyone actually brings their own PCs there and play, like stay there for a couple of days, play there, like sleep there. It's like basically a huge LAN party, and I enjoyed having LAN parties with my friends back when I was younger. Even when I was adult, we a couple of times hosted it in even in different cities. It was a very fun experience, and if I would have like friends traveling with me there, for sure I would attend.
Ah, great. Okay, cool. And something I want to ask you as well, Diamondprox. You're one of the most experienced LoL players out there. How would you reflect on how the ecosystem has changed over the years to where it is now? Because I feel like it's become a lot more professional in the 7 years I've been covering UK League of Legends. Is it in a better place now, more professional?
I think the ecosystem improved quite a lot. I already touched how um, basically I think if we compare the best thing is to compare, for example, our region with something else. If we compare our European region with Brazil, Brazil has a lot of players. Brazil has a lot of even good players that can learn from each other, but they don't have the ecosystem that we have here. They basically have the 8 professional teams or 10, and then
Mm,
the academies of those, but they don't have this whole infrastructure where like there are 20 more or 30 more. Like how many teams are in ERL even? I think maybe 50 or something like that. That's
mm,
50 more teams for the regions where players gather group together and can practice together and learn some macro stuff, learn how it interact with each other, learn about League of Legends. League of Legends is a very hard game in my opinion,
mm,
and this knowledge that they can grasp in even not the best teams, this knowledge helps even to improve the solo queue, where the players actually uh, they're mostly clones in solo queue, but they're not as clones as and other regions. You know, in Brazil, you can feel that some players are like they play good solo queue,
mm,
but their play style really suits only solo queue. And in Europe, uh, at least some players, like because of the infrastructure that is built, and that after the master tier most of the players already have been to the teams,
mm.
at least some players are trying to play the proper League of Legends, or at least you see the sparks of intelligence in the players' minds when they instead of chasing kills try to get objectives and stuff like that, and that's what grows the regions. That's why I think the infrastructure that we have right now in Europe really grew a lot, and it helps to develop the talent, helps to improve the game, and overall I enjoy having it here.
Yeah, it's improved a lot, I think. I've got to ask you, Diamondprox, what I know it's an obvious question, but what your most memorable moment is in your career? Because, like I say, you have a storied history. Is there something that sticks out in your mind for you over other moments?
Yeah, I think the most memorable moment for me is um, when basically Moscow 5 they had to leave Moscow 5 due to unfortunate circumstances with the owners, and
Mm,
we basically joined the Gambit, and we had to show some good results in the beginning of the Gambit era, and we joined this tournament called IEM Katowice after a short break uh, for the New Year. And in New Year, Russian people tend to chilled quite a lot, and after that after such a big chill we tend to not play so well. So when we were coming to IEM Katowice, which was I think in the end of January or something like that,
mm,
we were not in the best shape, and in the group stage, we went 1-3, but still managed to get out of groups just because in the last game we won the game faster than the other teams that had the 1-3 score as well. And
yeah,
after these results in the group stage, we managed to beat the best Korean teams in semifinals and the finals, and that's what uh, really my most memorable thing about the League of Legends is. And also I remember maybe on this tournament I got gifted this T-shirt by some really cool guy in ESL. It says,
Oh,
"This is my jungle. Get the fuck off." So this was very memorable.
I love that shirt. As a fellow jungler, obviously at much lower elo, yeah, that's really nice. And I'm glad you mentioned Intel Extreme Masters or IEM because when I was looking through your record, you've got some real success there at different IEM events. You've won quite a few over the years. Is there something about IEM that you seem to do particularly well in?
Uh, I think I think IM structure works for me much better than the league structure as a player, just because, and maybe for my team, but for me, I would say for me, and I affect my teammates as well. Maybe they are not so affected by the system. It's just that I'm kind of a player that likes to innovate stuff,
Yeah.
and when I come up with something new, it was really fun when you come up with something new and only you use it basically and no one steals it from you. And the IM structure where you prepare for the tournament but you're not playing any leagues, where you show basically everything you have and share
Mm,
your knowledge on the game, so you kind of could hide a lot more than you can hide right now. Right now, you're forced to play the league with like 10 million games and try to hide somewhere there. And especially if you're like it's kind of important to get a good placing in the
mm.
this stage as well. So yeah, I enjoy the other format much more, but I understand that it's maybe not as hype for the viewers, you know.
Yeah, so that now you've made a really good point there because it's hard to have secret things in your locker when you're having to play a group stage, like you say, loads of games. But is that something you'd like to hold on? If you're confident Bifrost will get to the playoffs, will you have a few secrets and tricks up your sleeve that you'd like to save for playoffs or EU Masters and beyond?
We will see, but now it's much harder to innovate and even harder to keep something secret, because
Yeah.
if you don't have a secret account where you're playing it on, or even if you're playing scrims and trying something that seems to work, the team you're playing against will share with other teams and this information will pass quite fast. So right now it's much harder to say if you will be able to innovate or not. Well, it just depends on the meta shifts.
Understood. And talking about the LCL, you were unbeaten in the most recent LCL with 4 wins, as I understand it, before it was unfortunately cancelled due to the war in Ukraine, which also meant no chance to qualify for MSI. I mean, that whole situation must have been difficult to handle.
It indeed sucked on so many levels, to be honest. Mm, apart from people suffering because of the uh, action of the authorities, which I guess throughout history happens all the time, but it still bothers me whenever this happens in the world. And the other part that really bothers me is in when you don't know what's going to be next. Basically, we were sitting on the boot camp. The uh, LCL got postponed. We were told that we don't know if it's going to continue or no, but like by the LCL heads. But we still wanted to practice as much as we can, show a good results, and maybe be able to show what we can on the bigger stage, at least win LCL, even if it doesn't go further. And I really like the big competitions, so we stayed there for 3 more weeks practicing without knowing if it's going to continue. And actually, for some reason, was much harder than the usual practice. When you're
Mm,
practicing, then there's a chance that you will not be able to show what you're practicing to the people. So basically, it feels like there is a chance that all this practice will go to nothing. The team practice, maybe you yourself, that you learn something, will get to carry it over to the next experiences, but the team practice just disappears. And it also it's it for me, it felt personally like the split that I had in Unicorns of Love when I joined them in LCS, and after 2 weeks, exactly like that, I was
mm.
forced to leave the LCS due to the visa issues. So I'm kind of used to it, but still it hurts. Yeah.
it's frustrating, right? Because it's an issue out of your control,
Yeah,
and I guess that can happen in sports as well. And sometimes it must be hard. It's something that you kind of have to accept. But I don't know what that must be like. So yeah, it sounds like, talking to you now, you seem like you're very positive and motivated for the NLC, and you're trying to make the best of a difficult situation.
I'm trying to. It's partially hard. Partially, it's a little bit sad because we wanted to work really hard for the team spirit. I really enjoyed the organization and our plan together for this year and maybe the year after, but all those plans went to nowhere, and it's actually uh, kind of depressing to think how much effort went went to this to that split and nothing came out of it. But now, yeah, now
Mm,
we just have to move forward, and I actually enjoy being in Europe now and playing
yeah.
here.
Well, we're looking forward to watching you play in the NLC. I can't wait for it to begin. And I've got a few more questions here. If anyone watching in the chat has got a question for Daniil, please ask. Please type it in the chat, and because we're sort of coming towards the end. One thing I really want to ask you about, Daniil, is you're a 29-year-old player, so you're more experienced than many others out there. And Faker said earlier this year, in the past, age was a large factor in determining a player's performance, but I've always thought its effect will decrease as the game matures. We've now reached a point where the speed of League of Legends theory development has slowed down compared to the early days of League of Legends, since the game doesn't change as much anymore. I think players can maintain their performance for longer periods. Do you agree with that? What's your thoughts on, this idea that players are expected to retire in their mid to late 20s, and do you feel like you've still got a lot to give?
I think in esports, if the game survives for so long as League of Legends, then the determining factor of the player's professionalism and how well he is able to play for the longer period of times is simply based on his interest and his what's discipline, and those are the main. If he is interested in the game and he has discipline to keep practice, the older player, the older player will be actually in some cases better than the younger one. And younger players, they're more uh, they usually tend to be better mechanically because they put all the effort that they're putting into practice on perfecting their mechanics, and this is very important for some of the roles, I would say, in League of Legends, especially AD carry, mid laner, top laner. They're very mechanically oriented roles, and those roles are basically for the young players to be really good at. And there are roles that require my, more thinking. I would say that mm, jungle and support require the most thinking in the game, so the older players uh, might be better in this regard because
Mm,
then League of Legends, as I said, is quite a deep game, and you learn a lot of patterns throughout your experience, and those patterns you cannot learn in a couple of years. Sometimes all the patterns and the pattern. It's important to recognize the patterns on the map to make the right calls as a shot caller. So I think some roles are just better suited for the younger players, some roles are better suited for the older players, but that also depends on the team. Some teams can get away with playing, for example, a very smart defensive top laner that will manipulate, like mastermind everyone on the map. Uh, if the opponents are not good enough to break him, basically, just because of his mechanics. And as mid lane as well, it could be a very smart mid laner like I would say Faker looks kind of smart in his place. Maybe he is not as mechanically gifted as he was before. He was basically a superstar mechanically. Now some other mid laners overcame him, but he's still there just because of his knowledge. And his knowledge, I think, helps his team not only learn but also play in the game.
And
Maybe the only role that requires mostly mechanics is AD carry. I don't think you can be just a smart AD carry.
and it's leadership qualities as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
players like you, like Faker, you're going to have those leadership qualities. Do you have on that note, who is the shot caller in this modern roster of Bifrost?
Uh, I think everyone should calls their like what they see. I tend to like I have this how to say I have this pattern where I always say what we need to do on the map as a team, and I always say that, like, for example, we finish this objective, how we prepare for the next one and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say it's really shot calling. Shot calling for me is not only that, but also micromanaging and I would say predicting what enemy team is doing, and based on that making a calls. That's what
Mm,
shot calling is. uh, but the basic plan for the game I can create, and I tend to work on it more, I think. But overall, everyone, how to say, helps in the communication.
yeah, it's interesting what you were saying about role swaps and things. Well, not role swaps, but you know that experienced players can do well in the jungle and support roles because I think some players towards the twilight of their career did just that. I think Yellow Star moved to support in the latter parts of his career, so that'll be interesting. You know, if we can maybe see pro players' careers prolonged if they move into roles like that that are more support roles and maybe slightly less, you know, whatever mechanically focused. I think
I,
that's interesting.
I mean, they're all still mechanically intensive roles. Like,
Mm.
try
Yeah.
playing trash if you're not experienced or not
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
mechanically trained. But it's just the mind is there so important as well. You need to not only understand what's happening on the map, you need to read your opponents to make good plays. So someone should do it on your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean mechanical. I meant like more macro. You know, those more
Oh yeah.
macro things. Yeah. Um, okay, like we've got some questions that have come in here. Um, initialize cast. Hello, initialize. A caster we have here says, speaking of patterns, considering how much the game changes, how easy or how possible is it to take your veteran experience and utilize it in the jungle?
I think the experience that I had before really helped me a lot in the jungle. Uh, I can I can basically, how to say, if I am given more time, I can go through all the patterns that I didn't know before that I know now. And basically, in some of the games that I play, I feel like if I would play this game a couple of years ago without knowing the pattern that enemy jungler can do or some enemy support, I would get fucked here. And now I know, now I can predict they're doing it, and I'm actually fine. And I even outplay them and get something out of it. So experience definitely stacks and helps, but there's also another thing as how to say, experience experience that you had before but changed now actually is destructive. For example, you've played a champion, like, you've played a champion that you knew how to play basically perfect, right? And then the champion gets changed a lot,
Mm.
and it's much harder for you to learn this same kind of champion but in a different way than for the new player to learn it from zero, because you need to unlearn something that you used to do on him
Yes.
before. So that's the bad part.
I've had problems with that. Even in my low elo solo queue, where I've one trick champions in the past, and then things have changed. You know, and burst champions or whatever aren't as viable now, uh, and it's a struggle. You know, so yeah, absolutely. I think unlearning things that must be a really tough skill. Um, we've got a few other questions here as well. I mean, this is more general question from Spyron. Hello, Spyron. Thanks for tuning in. Who's asking about MSI? So he said, "How do you rate G2's chances tomorrow and sort of Europe's chances?"
I think G2 are kind of good team, but they will struggle a lot in the upcoming games just because of the format that this MSI provided. It's basically they
Mm.
had to play million games, and the games they won against the best teams, like partially benefited from their drafts, and those drafts are now known by their opponents, so they have time to adapt. If they would play this best of fives without prior knowledge of their opponents, of how they drafts and what are their best strategies, I think they would have much more chances showing up really good results. But right now it will be a tough thing for them to win, but I think they can still manage it because they're a good team. But they just don't have this advantage of uh, how to say, opponents not knowing their strats.
Understood. Understood. Hi, Rav from X7 as well has asked again. What do you do when you're not playing League? Do you have any hobbies?
Um, yeah, when I when I don't play a league, my other hobbies are mostly around other games when those were interesting. But in the past years, actually, I tend to find less. How to say? I tend to not sometimes not find games that satisfy me enough. So now I go outside and do something that I like. I like cycling. I like just sightseeing and stuff like that. I like to be outside in the good weather. I mean, for me, good weather is almost any weather in my city. I only hate the very hot weather, so here it's almost always perfect for me. Those are my hobbies.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm very similar. The older I've got, I get less of a buzz out of different video games and things, and I go out more and got kids and stuff and going out and all of that stuff. Um, And also, will there come a point where you see yourself not competing as a player, and can you see yourself stepping into a coaching role or something like that, or is that too early to say? Because sometimes questions like that, I don't like to ask questions like that because it implies that you're coming towards the end of your career, which might not be the case.
Absolutely, I already see myself becoming a coach someday. I already how to say. Viewed some opportunities for the coaching experience in
Mm,
even in this split and in the previous splits as well. It's just nothing satisfied me too well in this regard, but I'm really open to this possibility as well, because the thing that I like about League of Legends the most is improving as a unit in a team, and it doesn't and being a player just adds the benefit of maybe impacting the in-game stuff when you're playing the game and also enjoying the mechanical aspect. But I can live without mechanical aspect, that's fine. But the strategic thing, that's what the most interesting part for me is. And on the coaching position, you can definitely affect it and teach your players that. So yeah, I can see myself becoming a coach anytime, but I enjoy being a player as well.
understood. Yeah, absolutely. I can tell from talking to you, you have amazing knowledge of the game, and I think coaching could lend itself well to you. The concepts you've spoken to me about, and all of that. So, last few questions then that I've got for you. What do you think of this new jungler, Belfeth? Because for me, a low elo player, it looks pretty complicated to me.
I didn't watch her. I only watched the video of her kit, but I didn't read the spells. She didn't look too hard. I think Riot actually shifted away from making champions with the how to say with the book description on every spell with 10 the, how to say the 10 years when you need to read 10 years for all the spells that the champion have on, and only then you
Oh, I
can have an
see.
idea how it works. Now they make much easier champions. Only Viego was a little bit hard, but not so really. Like Vex is a very simple champion.
Mm,
Who else was there released? Like the past champions
uh,
are quite simple,
Zeri.
and I think Belvet, yeah, maybe there
Mm,
is a little bit harder one,
mm.
but maybe mechanically, not in terms of like reading her abilities. Belvet, I don't think she will be too hard. Only I expected something a little bit more in terms of looking part, because this thing uh, should be like the void itself, and it should be scary and very big and dangerous, and it looks like a Pokemon or something.
Yeah, I have to say, a lot of game companies are guilty of doing that, designing characters in the the animation, and then but when they're in the game, it looks a little bit different. And League of Legends now, it does come across. It is an aging game. I know they upgraded Summoner's Rift whenever it was back in 2015 or 2016, but some of the criticism where people say, well, Wild Rift looks nicer than the PC version of League of Legends. That is a challenge for Riot, I think. Um, okay, any last questions for Daniil? Please put them in the chat. But I've got a fun question to end on here. Did you know your name and likeness was in this esports management game? It's called Esports Legend management game on the Switch. Now this game, I played this a few years ago, and they don't have any official licenses, but there is a player in there called Diamond, I think, who looks quite like you. So were you aware of that, and have you played as yourself in this game?
I wasn't aware of that before you asked, so not really. But I played the other, how to say, this manager esports team that was called the Team Fight Manager, and there are players like Bjergsen and stuff like that, and many players from the Dota 2. But I was I really enjoyed the experience playing the game, but I was always hoping to see my name pop on somewhere on some of the players, but it never did. I think I'm not on the list there, so it's really good to hear that my name is on the list somewhere. And I don't mind anyone using my name really, even without my consent, unless it's something malicious or something like that. I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I think. Mm, some companies need to help game developers easy their lives in terms of making games without requiring them too much. It's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. To be honest, I'll have to get a picture up for a clip, or I'll send you a picture of this. Yeah, diamond character in the game. Um, I've got one last question here from Spyron. What's one big change you'd like to see League make in the future? Something along the lines of the elemental drakes or alcoves. Is there something you'd like to see change in the game?
That's a really hard question because when I play games, many times I view the games from the how to say from the experience that I would probably, if I would create the game, how would I want this experience to be for the player? And in other games, for me, it's really easy to understand what to make better so the players would enjoy it more. But in League of Legends, when I play it and I put it so much time in this game, it's really hard for me to see what I could make better, except uh, some small changes in terms of like numbers of the champions or stuff like that, balance think a
Mm.
little bit better. Just because I think the Riot, but the Riot, how to say, developer team working on the League of Legends is probably the best developer team in the world, and that's why their game is so lives so long, so popular, and
Mm.
still feels fresh and interesting. So it would really take a lot of time for me to think what I would add to the game which is already quite good and improving in the right direction, in my opinion.
Great stuff. Okay, well, thanks everyone for your questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Daniil? I feel like I've learnt a lot from this interview today.
No, not really. Only thanks for watching, guys, and I really hope you will stick around watching the NLC. This region is quite good, and the games must be fun.
Absolutely. Well, Daniil, thank you so much for your time. I'm really looking forward to watching you play, watching Bifrost play. To everyone watching this, thank you for watching. Please follow Bifrost and NLC on social media. I'll see you next week. I think it's next Monday, the first game.
Yep, on
That right?
30th.
Yep. So I can't wait to see you on the broadcast and to see you playing against Kasing and the other players we have in the NLC. It's been a pleasure talking to you, a real legend of the game, Diamondprox. I wish you all the best this season and beyond. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much as well.
Great stuff. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon.